There once was a girl in a mech. She flew around, releasing all heck. She blew them a kiss, and then said, "Nerf this," and ran back to salvage the wreck. Hey guys, James here again with another video. Today, I want to talk about Overwatch 2, the sequel to the smash hit team-based shooter that came out back in 2016. All the shade aside, Overwatch 2 is pretty awesome and actually improves upon the original in a number of refreshing ways, but with a number of, let's call them, interesting choices, Blizzard has, of course, come under fire for some of its less than consumer-friendly business practices. Surprise, surprise. So, let's take some time to take a look at the game, why everyone seems to be hating on Overwatch 2, and try to answer, is Overwatch 2 actually worth spending time and money on? So first, just for anyone who isn't already familiar with the game, let's quickly discuss the gameplay of Overwatch. Feel free to skip ahead to the next sections if you already know the game. Overwatch 2 is a team-based first-person shooter game where two teams face off and fight over an objective. There are a number of different types of objectives you can fight over, such as control maps where two teams fight over the same zone, and escort maps where one team tries to push a car while the other team attempts to prevent the push. Most notably, there is a new push objective mode in Overwatch 2 where teams compete in a classic tug of war, fighting over and escorting a robot as far as they can. Because of these objective types and how the game works, Overwatch can be a very back and forth experience and games will often come down to the wire. A core part of Overwatch are the different characters that you're able to play. All characters are sorted into one of three roles: the tank, DPS, and the support. Each character will have unique weapons, as well as abilities and ultimates which can be used to swing battles. In the majority of cases, there's no mana type mechanics involved. Instead, most of the moves are based on cooldowns. And I think this is part of what makes Overwatch so appealing. There's so many types of characters available that can be hugely impactful if played right. And I think that most people should be able to find a character that they vibe with. There are even characters where you barely need to aim, or don't even need to shoot at all. Finally, an FPS for me. Because of this dynamic, Overwatch feels like a mix between an FPS and a MOBA or an MMO. The gameplay experience is very different compared to other classic FPS games. Being able to click heads is obviously important, but positioning, awareness, and smart ability usage and cooldown management are particularly important skills to develop if you want to be successful in Overwatch. However, teamwork might actually be the most important skill in Overwatch. Communication is absolutely massive, and I think that's one of the things that made me originally love Overwatch to begin with. Teamwork is so big that I'd maybe even go as far as saying that I don't really enjoy playing the game solo as much anymore. Solo queuing just feels like a different experience to me. There's team chat available for people to join into, so you can definitely still get good teammates who communicate, but of course, your mileage with that may vary. You can definitely still have a great time playing solo, but just in my opinion, the game is elevated to the next level when playing with friends. It's just so much fun when everyone's shouting and making call-outs and using their ults and everything. If it's possible, I would definitely recommend playing with a crew. So then, I have to say, overall, the gameplay in Overwatch 2 honestly feels pretty great. It really does feel reminiscent of the early Overwatch days before all those no-good, scary shield people started getting added to the game. The game still has all the chaos that we've come to know and love, but with the removal of the second tank, the game feels far better to play, as it no longer feels like a shield shooting simulator. Playing tank in particular feels awesome now too. Tanks are like mini raid bosses, and with proper support, you can become so powerful and so impactful, especially since teammates seem to love to focus on tanks instead of the support literally right next to them. Have no fear though, the other roles have had some changes as well. DPS characters, for example, now get a speed boost and automatically reload on kills, helping to increase their overall damage and separate themselves from the crowd. Supports, on the other hand, now get a passive self-heal so they no longer have to waste time or spells to heal themselves. Both of these are great changes and help to fit the faster pace of the game. I think there's also a couple other things to note. For one thing, there's been a couple of character tweaks and reworks to help them keep up with the new game. A big part of these changes would have to be the removal of a number of hard crowd control abilities. Overall, I think this is a good change, as it would really not be fun to become helpless against opponents. I'm looking at you, Cassidy. I also think cover seems to be way more important now than it used to be, as less shields means players will need to find their own cover a lot of the time. Because of this though, I do feel like I'm running into quite a few scenarios where players are just afraid of moving out from behind cover and pushing forward to the objective. And why is it that guy always plays the tank? You're a tank. Go tank, please. But this could also just be because of new players coming into the game. Additionally, I feel like the game is more punishing, and with increased focus on kills, individual skill does seem to shine through a bit more. Even still, it's pretty much impossible to win a game by yourself, and you'll want to make sure that you're still grouping up. I also feel like the game has become less about farming ultimates, although trading and winning the ultimate game is probably still going to be key for higher level players. I do think though, because of the shift in the game, that stomps feel like they are more common than ever, although again, this could just be due to new players in the game. Regardless, I still really love the fast and chaotic gameplay of Overwatch 2, and I think the majority of changes they made from the original game are good and impactful. Obviously, you'll still run into some frustrations as with any online game, but I think that's less on Overwatch itself and more from the nature of the online games in general. There will always be players who don't know how to play the objective, people who just run around solo and die instantly, people who complain about not getting healed when they spend the entire game separate from the team. The list could honestly go on forever. Outside of that, I've enjoyed the new characters a lot. Junker Queen is cool and surprisingly tanky. Sojourn is an insanely mobile monster who will likely be a very popular character. And Kiriko is pretty much instantly the most interesting support in the game. Plus, that intro song, banger. All of the new maps are beautiful and can be surprisingly complex too. A bunch of the old maps return, and I think in general, Overwatch has usually been pretty good with maps. They've also removed all of the 2 capture point maps, which, yeah, those maps weren't always the best. Oh, and they've actually added crossplay, so now you can play across PC and console. But be warned, when you do play crossplay, they actually supposedly will remove aim assist for console players. Considering the controversy surrounding some other games, I think this is probably the right decision, but I also think Overwatch is a game where, by its very nature, not having aim assist probably takes an already fast-paced and difficult game and makes it even harder. Regardless, I think crossplay is good no matter what. So then, if I, and many others on the internet seem to think that the gameplay of Overwatch 2 is actually pretty great, why is it that every single video and review about the game seems to be hating on it? Well, my fair viewer, let's get you into the loop. So perhaps the biggest issue people have with the game is the fact that it has number 2 on it, and honestly, it's a perfectly legitimate criticism. You see, the issue is that they initially sold fans on Overwatch 2 being a PvE based game, where you and a gang fight through different Overwatch missions and level up your heroes. It actually sounds really cool, although I do hope that the mission design is a little bit better than some of the seasonal events that they used to do. A multiplayer update was always supposed to come along with the new sequel, but now with the official release of the game, we have the multiplayer update, which is fine and dandy, but the PvE part of the game is delayed until next year. It seems like Blizzard is going the Halo Infinite route, releasing the multiplayer part first in order to help fund the game, while they build out the campaign for later release. Hopefully Blizzard can deliver better than 343 here, but whereas it used to be a guaranteed thing for them, nowadays, we can't be so sure. Since there's no promised PvE portion yet, there's also the question of whether changing it to 5v5 is really enough to justify it being a sequel. Really, it's just a marketing ploy, I guess, and the update is more akin to the StarCraft 2 patch that increased the number of drones mining, changing the pace of the game. While the game definitely feels fresh and better, it's also hard to avoid the fact that not a lot of changes were actually made if you think about it. I've also seen some complaints around attention to detail and the game's UI. Some stuff that is particularly frustrating for me is the removal of end cards and not being able to see the scoreboard at the end of games. How do I know who to endorse if I can't see how well they did? They also made navigating the menus a bit more convoluted than it needed to be. I don't necessarily think it's bad or anything, but it almost feels like the UI was built for mobile. I even remember seeing one video where a guy was saying he thought some of the character introductions had been replaced with generic mobile game ones, and I don't know. Don't be surprised if we hear about a mobile version of the game in the near future. Then, of course, perhaps the biggest issue is the shift in monetization model. Previously, Overwatch 1 was a game which you paid a set price for. You then get all heroes unlocked from the start and all of the later released heroes. The game's income was then supplemented with an in-game loot box system, and if I remember correctly, Overwatch was actually one of the games which popularized the loot box model. And this may or may not be a controversial take, but I actually liked Overwatch 1's loot box system. You would get one at every account level, which would give you a chance at skins and other goodies, and your repeats would then be converted to currency that you could spend to get ones that you actually want. Spending money on additional boxes was optional, and I personally never did, and still managed to get a number of epic and legendary skins for almost every hero. Now, Overwatch has moved to the good old Fortnite model, and it's not great. Skins are in the market like any other game now, and will cost a decent chunk of change to get, even ones that were available to be free in Overwatch 1. Legendary skins are going to cost you $20. Hot damn. Man, I wonder how much I could sell my account for. Although honestly, $20 for a skin compared to some other games isn't terrible. It's more or less on par, I think, but again, there is a lot of recycled content, at least until they start releasing more, so just keep that in mind. They also made obtaining free skins far more difficult. The main way, as far as I can tell, is by completing weekly quests which give you gold to spend. The thing I really hate about this system is the fact that the returns are diminishing. So it's like, why should I be motivated at all to try to complete more challenges? It just seems stupid to me and is clearly just a way to make money. Then, it also turns out that the new character Kiriko, and all new characters moving forward, seem like they'll be locked behind the battle pass. They're still free, but you do need to actually get decently deep into the game to unlock them, and if you watch my other videos, you know I hate locking characters in a competitive game like this. If they really insist on doing this, make it like level 20 or something, not level 55. Another controversial point is the fact that, unlike battle passes in other games, completing this one doesn't grant currency for you to be able to actually buy the next battle pass, so the perceived value here seems to be a lot less than in other games. And personally, even though I have bought battle passes in the past to support games that I enjoy, I actually don't usually complete them or even really remember just how many actually nice goodies we get. I could foresee some changes to the battle pass overall though, depending on the backlash from the community. I do have to come clean though. I bought the battle pass. Yes, I admit it. As much as I hate battle passes and how they lock players into a grind, I just felt like I had to. For, the sake of the video or something. So I guess this is where I try and answer, is Overwatch 2 worth your time and money? And I mean, considering the game is free to play, I'd say yeah, if you find enjoyment from the game, then it's absolutely worth playing, even as a new player. As a new player, you don't actually get all characters to start, but thankfully, they let you unlock characters by playing games, and once you reach 100 games, you should be able to get the full Overwatch 1 roster. While I can definitely see both sides of the argument around this system, I'm glad that Blizzard didn't decide to just lock all heroes behind a wall. Should you spend your money on it though? That's debatable. I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to how much you play. If each battle pass is $10 and each season is about 2 months, then you're potentially paying about $60 a year, assuming they don't eventually add in a way to make the pass self-sustaining. And I mean, if you're enjoying the game and getting playtime out of it, then that's really no different than buying the latest COD or a sports game, or heck, even being subscribed to an MMO or something. I don't know if I personally will be playing enough to spend that $10 every season, but I bought this season's because I'm willing to pay for a game that I've gotten a ton of hours and free skins out of over the years. I would probably suggest waiting on this current battle pass and seeing if there's any improvements in the future. Personally, I also probably wouldn't buy any of the old Overwatch 1 skins though, just out of principle. Overwatch 2 gets a 3.5 out of 4 for me. It really brings Overwatch back to form, and I would particularly recommend playing it if you have a good group of friends to play with. But hey, that's just me. Let me know down below what you think. Have you tried Overwatch 2? Are you having fun, and how do you feel about some of the choices Blizzard has made so far? And of course, thank you so much if you made it this far. If you had a good time, please consider clicking some of those buttons, and as usual, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace. Oh, also, keep Overwatch porn alive.